Question. I have teachers who say that it is not a certainty that in your next lifetime on this planet you will have the same opportunities as in this life. So yes, there is a next lifetime after this one, but it is not so that you will make it easier for yourself. In A Course in Miracles, there is a different look at reincarnation. It asks the question, what is reincarnating? What reincarnates is not the Christ self, the true you. Your true self doesn't need to reincarnate. The false self needs to reincarnate. Well, actually, yes, there are of course many different teachings out there, many different teachings about reincarnation. So what I can only comment on is my understanding of reincarnation, which of course is based on the Ascended Master teachings. And what the Ascended Masters explain is that, in terms of this, it is not a certainty that in your next lifetime on this planet you will have the same opportunities as in this life. No, what the Masters say is that when the physical body dies, you have a certain psychology in your emotional, mental, and identity bodies. As I explained many times, there are 4 levels of the material universe, 4 levels of our minds, the identity, the mental, the emotional, and then the purely physical. And the physical body dies, but the emotional body or mind, the mental body, the identity body, they are the ones that reincarnate. They leave the physical body behind. Now, people of course can have many different types of psychology, depending on their background from past lives and in this life, what they've done in this life with the opportunities they had. So there are some beings that cannot really move to a higher level. Again, the material universe has the 4 levels: identity, mental, emotional, and physical. So if you have a very low state of consciousness, very selfish, very self-centered, your soul, as it's normally called, but these mind, it might go into the lower levels of the emotional realm, which is called the astral plane, which is somewhat of a hellish realm. So yeah, if you are not open to improving yourself because you weren't open to improving yourself in your last life, you could come into your next life being worse off than you were in this life, because you haven't raised your consciousness. You might even have solidified yourself in this very self-centered state of consciousness. This is what you can also call a school of hard knocks, where the knocks just become harder and harder. So if you show no willingness to improve, to look at yourself, to ask yourself what you could change, then in between lifetimes you go into this lower astral realm and you're not receiving any help to improve or to heal there. So you might very well solidify your current state of consciousness and come into your next lifetime being worse off than you are now. That's quite possible. If you have a slightly higher state of consciousness, you might go to the mental realm and receive some help there, so you can come back and improve your situation. If you can go even to the identity level, you can and work with the Ascended Masters, then you can receive help and healing, so you do improve yourself. So it depends on your level of consciousness that you leave one embodiment with, and your willingness to improve, which means your willingness to look at yourself, your willingness to connect to teachers who can help you. So that's the mechanism there, you could say. It's your state of consciousness, your willingness to improve. But there is, of course, also a practical reality on Earth, which is that you look at the Earth, you look at how chaotic it is, how complicated everything is, and so you look at, here's a live stream that's ready to come into its next embodiment. But the question is, how many pregnant women are there who can provide that live stream with an opportunity to re-embody? And due to the complexity of life, what the Buddha called the interdependent originations, there may only be a limited number of bodies available at any given time. So the live stream will then have to either postpone its next embodiment, or if it wants to come into embodiment, it may have to choose between 2 or 3, and they might not be ideal. because it could be difficult situations, like you have alcoholic parents or dysfunctional parents or whatever. It's the only chance you have to come into embodiment, especially if you have a desire to come into embodiment at a certain time in a certain society. Then you might have to choose a less than ideal circumstance that could be, at least from an outer perspective, worse than your previous lifetime. But if you have grown in the meantime, it doesn't really mean your situation is worse, because you come in with a higher level of consciousness, which means you can deal with these outer situations in a better way and hopefully come to a point where you can move on. So this is one thing. In terms of A Course in Miracles, it asks the question, what is reincarnating? What reincarnates is not the Christ self, the true you. Yeah, but that's because the Course in Miracles has a very specific view of this. And I have commented on the Course in Miracles before. I've said for me it was a very helpful teaching, especially concerning non-duality and the duality consciousness. But I also, at the time I read the Course in Miracles, I already had Ascended Master teachings, and I could clearly see that the Course in Miracles was given for a certain level of consciousness. And that means that it was limited to what people at that level of consciousness could accept. And it also has a specific goal of helping people deal with psychology. It's not really the Course in Miracles' goal to give a cosmological teaching that explains everything, at least not the way I see it. So I could see, even when I read it, which was in the early 2000s, that Ascended Master teachings went a lot further. But that's also why more people are open to Course in Miracles than are open to Ascended Master teachings, probably. But anyway, so what the Ascended Masters explain is that what would be the parallel, I'm not sure it really is a direct parallel, but when a Course talks about the Christ self, that's what I would explain as the conscious you. And then it says, your true self doesn't need to reincarnate. Yeah, that is not a statement that's factually valid as it is stated. You have to give a deeper explanation. You can even say your true self is not necessarily the conscious you, it's actually the spiritual self, the I Am Presence. And you can say, when the I Am Presence was first created in the spiritual realm, it didn't need to reincarnate. Incarnate. It didn't have to take incarnation, especially not on a planet like Earth. I explained in my video about how the world was created that Earth is an unnatural planet, but we're also in an unascended sphere. So you can say the I Am Presence did not have to take incarnation in the unascended sphere, and especially not on an unnatural planet like Earth. It could grow in the spiritual realm, but it chose to take incarnation because it will go faster and it will gain different experiences by taking incarnation than by staying in the spiritual realm. And as I've explained, the I Am Presence cannot incarnate in its totality, therefore it creates an extension of itself, the conscious you. And you can say that the conscious you didn't have to reincarnate, but it was created to take incarnation. So that's really the purpose of it. Now, you can also say, your true self doesn't need to reincarnate, it's the false self that needs to reincarnate. Yes, you can say there's some validity to this. As I've explained, we have the outer selves that we create at the identity, mental and emotional level, and those have all these subconscious selves that I've created. They also have what we can call karma. However you want to define karma, it can be defined in different ways, but as long as you have unresolved psychology, you have karma, and you can't descend from Earth. So the outer personality is what is pulled back into reincarnating. And you could say from a certain perspective that the conscious you doesn't have to, but on the other hand, if the conscious you is very identified with the contents of the identity, mental and emotional minds, then it does have to reincarnate, because as long as it hasn't freed out itself from the identification with these subconscious selves and dissolved the selves, it isn't free to go back into unity with the I Am Presence. So from an Ascended Master teaching perspective, the conscious you has to reincarnate until it has dissolved these separate selves and overcome the illusions that they are based on, so that it can leave Earth behind, voluntarily and consciously leave the Earth behind, turn towards the I Am Presence, and then merge into oneness with the I Am Presence. So that's how Ascended Master teachings would explain it. And as I said, there are probably many people who follow the Course in Miracles who, if they heard this, they would vehemently object to it and say, no, the Course is the one that gives the highest teaching. And I don't have any problem with that. If that's what you need to believe because you need to have that experience, go ahead. I have just found teachings that are explain things that go beyond what the Course in Miracles explains, and that has been valuable to me, and that's why I'm teaching based on that understanding that I have, which to me goes beyond A Course in Miracles. But if you have a need to feel that the Course in Miracles is the highest teaching, then I just continue doing that. I'm not really trying to convince you otherwise. I'm just sharing my view and my understanding.